Whether you're at your local state park or the Starbucks drive-thru, the Jeep Gladiator by now has probably been a very familiar face to you guys. And the question being, does it still hold a candle against all its other mid-sized truck competitors? Let's find out. The Gladiator dropped for the 2020 model year, and it is basically a pickup truck version of the Jeep Wrangler, which everyone knows and loves. And ever since then, it's been a hit. I see a lot of these things a day. People unfortunately do the Jeep wave to me, even though I don't own this. This is a press vehicle. In my tester here, being the Mojave trim, it is the top trim level, sitting at about $66,000 as shown. To help justify the $66,000 price tag, you do get a decent bit of equipment for the Mojave trim. You get the specific 33-inch off-road tires from Falken. You have these specific wheels, you have Fox shocks that feel very good over rough terrain. You have skid plates underneath the vehicle, you have the Dana axles that are locking in the rear. In the new Uconnect system, you do have the off-road pages. I took this thing off-road a few days ago, briefly. I mean, as much as I can here in Central Florida. There's not really that many places to go off-road. And it handled itself pretty well. I only needed to use 4 high one time. If you're still not yet convinced of $66,000, orange graphics throughout the vehicle. There you go, sold. If you see a sport owner trying to give you the Jeep wave, just don't do it. They don't got the orange tow hooks and the orange graphics around it. You do, they don't. Now moving into the things that differentiate it from a Wrangler, very obviously a truck bed. It is only available in one configuration. It's a 5-foot bed, crew cab, just like a lot of other mid-sized trucks are moving to. There's no more single cab, long beds. Unfortunately, that's just what consumer demands are. For your average Joe that just uses his truck as a toy, which I suspect most of these will be used as just kind of like a third vehicle on the side, it's fine. You can throw all your beach stuff back here, your Home Depot and Lowe's runs, your grocery runs, the occasional drawer or washing machine you have to move around off Facebook Marketplace. This truck bed will do the job just fine with a payload capacity of just over 1,200 pounds. As for amenities, this one does have the optional power outlet in here, which with my camera angle you can't see, but just trust me, it's in here. Would I lie to you? I would, but I'm not lying to you right now. If you dare tow with this thing, which I say dare because with the Pentastar already as it is, it's kind of it can apparently tow 7,000 pounds, which, cool. I guess it can. Unfortunately, we must move on to my least favorite thing about this vehicle, and that is the powertrain. For 2024, they dropped the 3-liter EcoDiesel, which was I can only assume an amazing powertrain for this truck. Would have been the only midsize truck with a diesel these days in the US, with 260 horsepower and 440 pound-feet of torque. But right now we have to make do with the Pentastar with 280 horsepower and 260 pound-feet of torque in a truck that weighs 5,000 pounds. That gives this thing a 0 to 60 with the ZF 8-speed automatic of about 8.4 seconds, which is about the slowest in its segment. And towing a trailer, I can only imagine it's got to be over 10 seconds. Not like you get a good fuel economy either. I average around 14. EPA says 17 city, 22 highway, but that's if you're grandma. The Pentastar V6 itself is not really a bad motor. It's just kind of meh. It's been out for about 15 years. I really haven't heard that much going wrong with these things, so I guess if reliability is what you're looking for, they're all right from what I've read into, but it's just an engine. It's a powertrain. It's nothing emotional. Don't get excited about it. Plus side though, you can get a 6-speed manual, which I guess is pretty cool in a truck these days. Apparently there is some good news. Sometime in the next year or so, I heard a rumor that the 4XE trim is going to come to the Gladiator, which already has been out for the Wrangler. It's a plug-in hybrid 4-cylinder. Probably would give this thing a 0 to 60 more in the low 6-second range, which would be pretty good for a truck like this. I bet Jeep did that just so they could stay in line with the Toyota iForce Max 4-cylinder turbo hybrids. Although the powertrain is my least favorite in this segment, I will say this truck does offer a unique experience that you can't get in any other mid-sized truck, and that being, it's just simply more fun. And certainly not from a driving perspective on road. This thing's about as fun as like a bowl of oatmeal, but off-road and the fact you can take the roof and doors off. Yesterday, I went to the beach with some of my friends and I took the doors and the roof off and it was a blast. We're going down the highway, 70 miles an hour. You have no doors on there. You have no roof on. It's a convertible pickup truck. You go to the beach, all your stuff's in the bed. You have 4-wheel drive. There's nothing else in this segment that's a pickup truck with a convertible roof and doors that you can remove in like all that in under 30 minutes. On top of all that, you can remove the windshield in like 10 minutes. You remove the wipers and 4 torque screws, and it folds down, and then you're in World War II. Now moving on to the interior, given the outside looks of the vehicle, it is surprisingly nice in here and full of technology. Starting off with the biggest change for 2024 is the 12.3-inch Uconnect screen with the Uconnect 5. It is very responsive. It's like a phone. You have your climate controls here along with physical buttons and dials. You have navigation. You have Apple CarPlay that's wireless. All your apps here. You have your off-road pages here where you can see your diff lockers and the adventure guide. You can like log where you go off-road. Here, as you can see the off-road trails, you can see how your gauges are, your trans temp, battery voltage, oil temp, oil pressure, coolant temp, your pitch and roll in flat Florida, and a forward-facing camera that you can clean. This one being a top trim level, you do get the optional Alpine sound system with a Bluetooth speaker in the back that you can take out for like beach days and stuff like that, which I think is pretty cool. Moving on to the gauge cluster, you have a color screen here surrounded by 2 analog dials, and it is mildly configurable with this scroll wheel right here. You can see a bunch of messages, your audio, your standard trip computer, some off-road gauges, your pitch and roll, your speed, tire pressure, etc. It's pretty standard fare, nothing really too outstanding, but still pretty decent. I was surprised when I got this tester that it had radar cruise control. I didn't know that you can get Gladiators and Wranglers with radar cruise, but it is pretty nice, and it is stop and go. I really like what they did with the center air vents. With the old ones, it was the circle vents that were surrounding a smaller Uconnect screen. With these, it's very sleek underneath here, and it looks pretty good for 2024. Now moving into the center controls here, they're mostly your HVAC controls with your fan blower motor here, dual zone, heated cloth seats, heated steering wheel, your volume knob, radio controls, auto start stop, and more off-road controls, which more of them are down here. Right below your optional window switches, you do have your axle locker, your off-road plus mode, which is like a traction control mode for off-road, aux buttons in case you want to put like, you know, a light bar, winch, etc. Here you have your manual transfer case, which is on the fly to 4 high, and if you want to go to 4 low, you put a neutral, you go to neutral right here for the transfer case, and then you're on 4 low. That will never be used by 92% of owners. As I mentioned earlier, this thing does have a ZF 8-speed automatic, which is pretty exceptional. It frankly carries the Pentastar way farther than it should. Manual mode is very responsive, more than I thought it would be. And you can get a 6-speed in one of these, which means that this and the Tacoma are the only 2 midsize trucks that offer a manual still. For the Mojave trim, as I mentioned for the exterior, there is orange, but in here it's carried with the orange accent here, orange stitching, also on the seat with this fake like metal look thing, and Mojave on the seats. Moving on to the back seat, I am sitting behind myself at 5'10", and I have just enough room for like an hour or 2 trip. And there are some amenities back here, like air vents, rear window switches down here because the doors come off, a household outlet, and 2 USB-C plugins. The reality with all these mid-sized trucks is that the back seats are not really that big, but in a pinch you can fit 4 people. With all that being said, is the Pentastar powered truck any good? Let's hit the road and find out. As you can expect, driving a body-on-frame truck with 2 live axles and off-road oriented tires and suspension, it is a little bit dreary to drive on the road. Starting off with some basic driving impressions, steering on-center vagueness is very apparent for a 2024 vehicle. Especially at highway speeds, you do kind of notice that there is some play in the steering, like I'd say half an inch to an inch before the wheels actually start to do anything, which makes driving above 80 miles an hour a little bit more of a chore than it really needs to be. On the subject of compromises on the highway, all the removable panels do cause for a lot of wind noise. I did have a passenger that she did complain that it was pretty loud in here. We were only going about 80 miles an hour. But so is the price to pay to have removable panels. I'm sure all the other competitors, it is way quieter in the cabin. Acceleration is also not its strongest suit. I'm going 20 miles an hour. I'm just gonna mash the gas. Defaults to second gear. 1 second. That's 60. It takes a second to get going. The transmission shifts are crisp and smooth. I will say a manual will be a little bit more fun, but the auto does suit the vehicle very well. 4-wheel drive is on the fly. Right now I'm going 40 miles an hour. There's 4 high, back to 2-wheel drive, just like that. I do believe in other trim levels you can get like a 4-wheel drive auto option, but don't quote me on that. Now let's do a little bit of an acceleration test from the get-go. We're gonna just mash it. Traction control cut in. It's 30. This is a 55-mile-an-hour road, and we have hit the speed limit. Acceleration is adequate, of course, for most consumers buying this thing. You'll be fine, but I can only imagine a mile above sea level in like Colorado, it's gonna be wheezing for air a little bit, especially when you put bigger tires on this thing, lift, add more weight from like a roof tent. It's gonna be a very slow vehicle. Unfortunately, there is no choice for that. A positive note is this thing does have radar cruise control. It is pretty easy to activate. You just set the following distance, hit set, and that is really it. I'm cruising at 60 miles an hour now. It'll keep a pretty good distance. You can adjust the distance with this little rocker switch right here. There is forward collision warning, but no lane keep assist, but that's fine. In a vehicle like this, with the steering being this vague on center, I really wouldn't want lane keep assist. It would kind of just throw me all over the place, which is why I suspect they didn't put it in here. I'm right now going 55 miles an hour. You do hear the road noise already. There's not as much tire noise as you might think with these all-terrain 33-inch tires. One positive of this truck is visibility. Just like an 80s vehicle, it is very upright, so that means you do have a pretty good glass house, even with the pricey glass in the back and like the big blind spot back there. There's really not that big of an issue. visibility. One thing that American cars always do right from my experience is air conditioning. It is right now 96 degrees outside here in Central Florida. I have the AC set to 70 degrees and that's auto setting, and it keeps the cabin very cool with no problems whatsoever. The Alpine sound system, this thing is pretty good. I can't show you because YouTube does copyright music violations, but you can trust my word, at 80 miles an hour with all the doors and the roof off, you can hear your music pretty clearly and loudly. But unfortunately, with the doors off, you don't really have that much storage in terms of immediate access. You do have storage underneath the rear seats, which is nice, but like up here, there's no nets or anything. You only have these 2 cup holders. You also have this 2-story storage compartment. On the very, very light off-roading I did yesterday, this thing was pretty composed off-road. The Fox shocks really absorbed the bumps well. The 33-inch tires went through it with no problem, and this thing really does excel in that environment. As for daily driving, which is where most of these Jeeps are going to be on the road, it's all right. You have rear radar cruise control, your air conditioning, good sound system, good infotainment. The seats are pretty comfortable. They are cloth and heated, but it's nothing really extraordinary at all. But ultimately, it is a bit of a compromised truck in terms of road noise, highway mannerisms, passing power. In those areas, really, its competitors do way better than this thing. With all this being said, what's my final verdict on the Jeep Gladiator Mojave? While it is way more compromised than its competitors, but those compromises really stem from the fun nature of this vehicle, from removing the roof, the doors, the off-road capability with the live front axle and the 33-inch tires and the Fox shocks. This thing does offer a little bit of a different experience than its competitors, but beware if you want something that's a little bit better of a daily driver. But if you have other vehicles in your household, or you really don't care about driving dynamics that much, I'd say opt for this thing. It is pretty fun, and there's really nothing else like it in the segment. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see y'all in the next review.